Through a long week.
It has.
Very well.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So this is me. My name is Eri, and I have 5 years of professional design experience. A couple more years outside of the professional. It's just when I started working full time versus minus my freelancing years. So 5 years of full time design experience, and I have a dog named Chief, and that might as well be a huge mistake because sometimes I don't know who's in charge, me or Chief. So maybe I should change his name to Bingo or something so that he can be listening to me. I'm not sure, but yeah. But so design related, I started off as a UX designer, then I added UI design and some other design related skills. And now I'm moving towards UX research because that is my absolute favorite part. However, from you, what I want to know is your name, your background, why you're choosing this course, and what your expectations are. Please let me know if you're pursuing your passion or you're here to look for money. Those are very valid reasons for taking this course. That's absolutely fine. Another thing is I encourage awkward silences. It's supposed to be an interactive class, so I will keep quiet until somebody answers a question that I ask. Thank you very much for coming. For today's lesson. So we touched briefly what UX is last week. We're going to be going a bit more into the difference between UX design, UX research, and product design, and exploring how exactly do we create good UX. Leslie talked about design thinking, but then we're going to be talking about system thinking and what the difference is. We're also going to be exploring the current research categories, and then we're going to do a mini project where we create a research plan, do some research, and be able to analyze the information that we've got. So we can build things like our personas, user journeys, or user flows. The essence of that is to have some hands-on experience. So when people say you're starting a research project, what's the first thing you do? You create your plan, right? The things you consider when you're creating your plan. We might touch on how to choose the right research method for your project. The way the project is going to happen is one of you is going to give us a problem that we are going to solve. So we're going to start all the way from discovery to say, this is the problem. How then do we decide if this is something that we're going to do or not? And then work through some of the research process to figuring out more information, right? So that's how that's going to work. All right. If you weren't here last week, we talked a bit about what user experience is. And now we're going to be a bit more on whether or not it matters. I said this before that my class is very interactive and I expect people to answer, which is why we have this. I am going to be writing out our responses here as to what user experience is. Does anybody that was here last week want to tell us what they think user experience is or UX? And whether or not it matters. So it's two-part question. What is UX and does it matter? And if you say it matters, tell us what you think about us.
Hi. Can you hear me? The user experience is the feel, the journey a user goes through, and when using a solution provided by a company, either through a website or through an application, or even through a physical use of whatever solution is being provided. Now, it doesn't matter. I think it does. Or I think it does. For every product placed out there, it's meant to solve a problem. And if the person that is meant to solve the problem is going through stress and is sweating and is crying and is experiencing a lot of bad experience and hope when getting to that position, it doesn't really tell a good story. The person, even though it solves the problem, the person may not go back to that same position, but we try to look for a better solution. So yeah, I think it does matter.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, who else wants to go? Who else wants to try and tell us what UX is?
UX. Hi. Sorry.
Hi. That's fine. Fine.
UX includes components of branding, designing, usability, and function in the design of a full process of obtaining and integrating a product. So it matters. UX matters because it's meant to solve problems like when you like, for example, I know that there are bad user experience and there are good user experiences. When a person, I feel the whole idea of the UX is to help solve people's problem where whatever products they've been using, and we discover, okay, there are better ways to make it easier for people to use our product without stressing or without going through stress. For example, in our last class, our lecturer mentioned everybody knows ketchup.
Mm.
That's, I'm just like trying to make an example. It usually comes in a bottle container, and it's hard to use kind of because it's not, you can't press it or squeeze it since it comes in a bottle container. I think they discovered that there is a better way they could have done it to make it easier for people to use. So they make it come in a plastic container, which is more squeezable. Like you can squeeze it and it comes out easily. So literally that.
That's absolutely correct. That's actually correct. Hold up. I think I want to do something to just help buttress your points. So it's cool for everybody else to see.
Thank you.
That's absolutely correct. And that's one of the best analogies I like to reference when we're talking about UX. And Chinedu said it goes beyond the websites or apps that you're using all the way to actual physical products. And this is an example of a physical product that can benefit from a good user experience. So it's great. It's a good one. And again, just so we know what, so this is what she's talking about, right? It used to be this bottle that you be
Yes.
just get it out, and then now you can just easily squeeze it out and it comes off. And so there's probably an entire process of understanding user behavior to say this doesn't work and this does. If this falls on the ground, it breaks, and you have kids around, that's another problem. If this falls on the ground, maybe the worst that will happen is it's going to spill, and then you can just easily clean that up. All right, so y'all are right. You're correct. Any interaction user has with a product or service, that is what user experience refers to. And the short form of the answer again is that it does matter, right? But here's some other reasons why it matters, right? So in addition to, like, when we say solve problems, and one of the things that another thing that UX can do for you is that it can reduce poor retention rate. So retention rate is a user signs up for an application, tries to get something done, it wasn't easy to do, they leave and go to someone else. So you were not able to retain that customer because of a bad experience, because of how stressful it was to get the work done. Another thing that it does is conversion. So if your experience is good, it means that, maybe let's take an e-commerce website, for example, right? If you're unable to pay for something, when I want to pay for lights, I used to try how many to determine which one will work. Sometimes I use Buy Power, sometimes I use my bank app, sometimes I try to use different bank apps actually. So depending on the one that works, right? Or the one that's, but I usually go to my bank app, Access Bank, just because the process is much easier. So unless they have network issues, I am going to go to that one because it's much easier than every other one. So if your process is simplified and it's not stressful for people, you are converting users easily. So you have people coming back to your platform, which is an increase in your retention rate. And then now you can have more users. And then there's also the thing where people start becoming ambassadors of your brand. So without even you telling them, they're already going to say, oh, what do you use to do this thing? You should try out this application. Another thing is adoption. It makes it easy for most people to start using it and continue using it. So you launch a product, they test it out, the product is nice, the product is easy, it becomes a part of people's lives. Think Bolt, think Uber. So right now, it is now like, it's adopted so much that it is part of people's routine to say, I'm going out, book Uber, I'm going out, that sort of thing. And then that also translates to revenue, right? Because in the example of e-commerce, if your process is easier, it means more money because more people are completing a process for you. So beyond solving a problem for people, if you want to convince stakeholders on why they should take their user experience very seriously, you can start with revenue. It literally translates into bringing you more cash because a process is easy for users to complete. So these are just other reasons why UX is important. So I have this that shows us like real life issues there. Whoever thought of this cup was like, oh my God, you probably see this. I mean, thinking, oh, this is so cute. Look at that. It's a mug with the ears, and then you want to drink water. And then there's this, imagine going on an elevator and you just want to get to the how many floors, and you have to be literally reading what all of this looks like. Let me ever try. Let me make a better experience for you to find your large this. You have to be. And then do you understand? I'm sure it's the kind of thing where you have to press one of these buttons before being able to press any of these things, and then there are no instructions anywhere. Or you enter inside there and you spend a good 5 minutes reading and trying to understand how it works first before going ahead. And then the next thing I have here is WhatsApp. This beautiful invention by WhatsApp, where for some reason you delete a message and WhatsApp is telling the person that you did not want to see the message, that you deleted the message. So the next thing that happens is, wait till you delete. Why? What did you delete? Tell me. And I'm like, the essence or the reason why I deleted this is probably so that I don't have to tell you what it is. Maybe I just made one rubbish error inside. I will not be explaining that it's error that made me delete it. So what's the point? So this is also another insight to say that just because they are a large company, just because they are popular, does not mean that they are getting everything right when it comes to design and UX. Ige Jigo say it has caused problem in marriages and relationships. Look at, do you understand? So this is why you need good UX, so that you don't break people's homes again. So please, when we're going forward as a designer, know that there's a chance that you may ruin marriages or relationships. Okay, good. All right, so that gets us into UX research. So we talked about user experience, and now we're going into user research. Just by some of us may have insights into this, some of us may not, but just by hearing user research, what do you think we're talking about here? What is user research? Who's going first?
Yeah, I'll go first. This is like conducting a survey
Okay.
to understand what your users like, their pain points. Basically, just conduct a survey to know what they need and to understand how best you can design a product, basically.
Okay. Pinpoint and how. Okay. All right. Who wants to go next?
For me, I would just say user research is basically a way of trying to understand the need of who you are designing for or who you are creating a solution for.
So the first answer is that it is conducting surveys to understand user pain points and how to best design a product. The other response we got is a way to understand the needs of people that you're designing for. Does anybody else have anything to add to these definitions that are also correct?
User research.
Dun, dun, dun.
User research is understanding user behaviors and their needs in order to create the final product or like to create something useful if you understand what I'm saying.
All right, so we're understanding user behavior and needs to create something useful for them. These are all correct answers to different varieties and extents. But here's a textbook definition. According to Interaction Design Foundation, which is where I got this definition from, user research is the methodic study of target users, including their needs and pain points, so designers have the sharpest possible insights to work with to make the best designs. So everything you all said, we're studying our users generally, we're understanding their behaviors, we're understanding their needs, we're understanding their pain points, and the reason, and we're just generally getting to know our users. We're also building, it's also a way to build empathy for the people that we're designing for, right? Because when you understand that this is an actual, you can know that something is a pain point without understanding how it affects the people involved. So when you're conducting research, you get deeper insights into how exactly this affects these people, and you can go, oh my God, yeah, this is really bad. We need to fix it. We need to not break people's marriages and remove this feature from WhatsApp so that everybody can be fine and we don't have to answer so many questions when we delete a message on WhatsApp. So it's insight not just into needs and pain points, but also into behaviors so that we can understand and empathize with our users. So there's this thing where we're going away from just looking for problems to looking for opportunities. So if you're focused, if you're doing research, you should zoom out and be like, yeah, it's not just needs and pain points, really. It's just understanding also people's behaviors so that you can easily spot other opportunities. So it used to be just solving problems, but right now research has expanded, or UX has expanded to both opportunities and problems. And the major difference is Netflix is, I don't want to say Netflix is not solving any problem, to be honest, because it is, but it is more like it understood an opportunity to enhance user behavior. So before Netflix came, we used to rent out CDs physically, and we had our DVDs to play with the CDs with. And Netflix is okay, we're moving into the web and people need to continue doing it. It's not like people were complaining to say, why, how can I do this on the website? How can I have an app that is going to help me do this or help me build this? So those things is like spotting an opportunity to say, oh, we should digitalize this process. Same thing with Piggyvest, right? Savings has always been happening, right? And then it was just a matter of, well, let's digitalize this process and maybe even make it better and more efficient. Another thing is the essence of Disneyland. It is now solving the problem of what do I do with my time, or what are exciting places and adventures that I can do. But generally, I'm trying to figure out how we will come and say the problem is that people don't know what to do with their time. But essentially, the point is we should be open to not just solving problems, but understanding opportunities as well, just making that distinction between problems and opportunities. Alrighty, so we know what it is. I think we already answered this one on why we conduct research, to understand pain points, opportunities, empathize with users, and whatever it is. So these are the textbook reasons for this. Create designs that are truly relevant to the people, that are easy and pleasurable to use. So you can understand, yes, the return on investment on your UX design. So the design you're doing, you can understand how well it is serving the people, you know. So yes, you have data to back your strategy and design decisions. So it's easier to design if the research team has come to say, yeah, we realize that this exactly is the need. You're not wasting your time to say, I did work on a project where we had to do like plenty different versions because we're still in the middle of research, but we still wanted to have something out. And so based on whatever new information we're having from user, we're like, yeah, no, we need to take this out. We need to take this out. We need to add this. We need to add that. So if you do your research right, you will have a lot less back and forth, and you would have a product that is all of these things. Okay, so what is the difference between UX design and UX research? A UX designer's goal is to design a product, right? And they design this product based on insights from a researcher. So like I said before, Your researcher goes through the entire process of talking to users or reviewing data on usage, maybe using tools like Hotjar to say what part of the screen are users spending a lot of time. So doing heat maps to see, oh, users spent more time on this part of the screen or this part of the screen. Or you can see your drop-off rate to say a lot of users came through this journey, but at this point they stopped. So this is where this is like a dead end. So maybe 50% of users came all the way here, only 10% of users went past this point, right? So if you're reviewing that data, you can go back and say, yeah, I think we have a problem at this point. We need to probably understand user intentions, or we need to understand exactly what the issues are and the reason why users are not getting past this point. Especially that happens a lot if you're building an e-commerce website and that point is your checkout process. So why are users not checking out, or why are they not getting to the point where they check out? So that's something you want to look into. So UX designer is going to design that checkout process and make it easy based off the insights that a UX researcher finds out. So their goal as a researcher is to understand users and their motivations or their intentions, or how exactly they are currently solving the problem. And then again, the designer translates that into a wireframe, a low fidelity wireframe, a high fidelity wireframe, or sometimes an actual UI design. All right, so the next thing we're going to be adding to this, coming. All right, I was going to say
I
I'm
have
coming.
like a question.
Oh, okay.
The UX designer and UX researcher, are they like two different like people?
In the ideal world, these are different roles.
Okay.
So we're going into what the difference is between these roles. It is used interchangeably, especially in the Nigerian community, but these are different roles. So if you go into larger companies, then you would have UX researchers, you would have UX designers, you will have product designers, you will have UI designers. However, the umbrella term these days is product design and UX research. The reason is that for most UX design roles, they would still require you to use our interface anyway. And there's something cringe about saying UI UX. I really don't like that. I so just move, right? Product design does evolve a bit more, but then upgrade yourself from being a UX designer to being a product designer, or upgrade yourself from being a UI designer to being a product designer is what I'm trying to say. So the difference again is while a UX designer is just focused on the products and with insights from a researcher, the product designer is generally involved in all of these things, including like project management and business related processes. So the kind of things where you're called into more senior meetings to discuss the business direction, and then you're taking notes to say, all right, this is how our design, or this is how our design process can help us achieve this goal as a business. So you're understanding what the business wants to achieve and you're taking that into consideration when you're designing. Like designers usually just care about user needs and what the user goals are and design for that. But if you're a product designer, you also care about what the business goals are and what the user goals are, and then you combine those together when designing your interface. So obviously you should be at the point where you're a product designer, right? Because that's what most businesses would want. And then there is user research, right? If you don't want to do product design, if you don't want to do UI design, you can focus on being a user researcher, where again, your research insights is contributing to product strategy, right? So half the time when you're doing research, your insights helps the designers and the team go in a certain direction, or say, yeah, this product is not going to work for our users because XYZ thing, or we need to create more accessible products because there are physically challenged people, right? There are blind people, there are deaf people, there are neurodiverse people that is going to be using your platform, and you should consider accessibility for those people. So ideally, your researcher is going to make sure that your product is usable and it is accessible. So they may be testing those things on your product. But if you're a product designer, you should know all of these things. You're doing everything at the same time. And usually, if you're in the Nigerian environment, you have the opportunity to do all of these things because that's the kind of work that they make you do. Unless you're in an Oga-centered organization where it's Oga that is telling you what exactly to build and how exactly to design. The only thing you're doing is adding shape and color. I would not want to work in that kind of organization, by the way. I do not wish it for any of y'all. All right, so when it comes to research task, this is ideally what a UX designer will probably take part in research and do stuff like information architecture. And what exactly that means is figuring out what information comes first and what goes next, or what's most important for people to see. Your sitemap is basically your navigation through a website, right? Where is the user going to start from? How are they going to be able to find XYZ product or XYZ page? So that's exactly what your sitemap is. It's just a navigational map. Your user flows is how your users are going to accomplish the steps your users are going to take to accomplish a particular task. If you want them to check out the step for signing up, logging in if that's required, or maybe you put the login and sign up after the user has tried to make payment, or you, so whatever that flow is, however you want that to happen is what your user flows generally is. And then your wireframes is the first version of your draft, right? To say, oh, this is what I think it will look like. In the wireframe stage, you're probably figuring out what's the best way to represent this information for users, and you're probably testing your wireframes. Prototypes is, in the digital world, it is a clickable or interactive design that people can go through. Sometimes, depending on the prototyping tools, it would mimic actual applications where you can enter actual data. Or if you're using Figma, it is just click-throughs, right? And then if you're a researcher, what this means is you're doing information architecture, you're doing user flows, you're doing sitemaps. But in addition to that, you're the research person, right? And then there is qualitative and quantitative research. And we're going to go through all of that eventually. But what it just means is for quantitative research, you're dealing with numbers. For qualitative research, you're dealing with behaviors. You want to know how people are acting or reacting to a particular thing. This is mostly for a qualitative researcher, right? So some of the things you do is you conduct heuristics evaluation. What that means is you go through a website and you're like, yeah, no, this isn't good for our users. This isn't good for our users. This isn't good for our users, and stuff like that. You do competitive analysis to know who your competitors are, what they're doing right, what they're not doing right, how you can do better, or what are the things that can ruin their business and possibly yours. Third-party research is basically you're reviewing other people's research. So it's also called literature review, right? So you're reading blog posts, you're reading articles, you're reading dissertation papers just to understand insights that other people have already done. So sometimes when you're not able to reach out to users directly or at the beginning of your research when you're trying to get more information, that's what you do. User interview, like on surveys, Onyeka mentioned, is generally you're either talking to people directly or you're sending out questions in a form. Google Forms, most popular, for people to fill out information for you. Diary studies is over a period of time, you ask people to impute certain data. Maybe they wake up, you ask people to impute the time exactly they woke up, the time that they picked up their phone as soon as they woke up, or whatever it is, but you have them do that for a period of time, right? And then you create personas. So by the time you finish doing all of these research activities, you're able to profile the people that you're using and come up to say, yeah, this exactly is who our target audience is based on what we're looking for in our research and who we've spoken to. So the people in this category are the people that we should build this product for. User testing is similar to heuristics evaluation, where you're going through a platform and you're making sure it is easy to use. And you're able to do this because you're armed with what UX best practices is, and also the laws of good design or the principles of good design. But yeah, so we've said this is stuff that a UX designer should do, and this is stuff that UX researcher to do. But what is a product designer doing? Even though I mentioned that before. Lucky for y'all, this is a product design course. And so you will be doing all of these things at some point, at one point or the other in your life doing research. You might be doing some more because that's your strength, or that's the project, that's what you've been able to do based off the project that you're working on. But ideally, you would be doing some of all of these things. And here's what it is. Dun, dun, dun. So you're doing everything that a researcher is supposed to do, and then more, right? You're also incorporating market research, you're doing workshop facilitation, you're doing system thinking, which comes in because again, you're going to be considering user needs and business goals. And you should ideally also be considering the technical constraints before designing or developing your solutions. And you will be doing UI design. UI design kind of also works for UX designers, but sometimes the UX design rule is paired with UX research, so you may not have to do UI design. What I would advise though is that regardless, you should understand what system thinking is. You should have an idea of what UI design is and how it works. Do all of these things and then eventually decide this is where I'm going to specialize, right? Because then whatever team you're going to work with, you're going to be interfacing with the product designer, you're going to be interfacing with the engineers and product managers, and you need to be able to speak to them. Product managers are mostly concerned with market research, and if you understand market research or how it works, you can speak correctly to a product manager and you guys can be on the same page, right? So you should ideally be aiming to know how to do most of these things. The ones you eventually get to do depends on the company that you're working for, the projects that you're working with, and who your users are. It really does depend. But ideally, you should have knowledge of some or most of these things. And there's more. Actually, these are just like the most popular ones that you will come across. And even at that, like I said just now, it really depends on your industry and the products that you're working with. So if you want to be an agency designer, which is what I've been so far until now, you will get the opportunity to have this much breadth. Is that what I want to say? Yeah. And maybe depth in design because of the range of projects you'll be working on and you'll be working with. Today, you're probably working on a project in the real estate industry. Tomorrow, you're working on a project in the education industry. Sometimes you're working on a project in the fintech industry. And your role, you're working with companies that are starting a product versus companies that have launched a product that's already in the market. So depending on whichever phase you're in, you will get to do some, most, or all of those things. I have had to do most, if not all of those things, maybe one or two, because I've been an agency designer. But then there's also the advantage of being an agency designer versus being a product team designer. Generally, agency designers are discriminated against in the market. So if you're going out, understand that is a thing. And then, yes, so that's it. That's the major thing to consider if you want to be an agency designer. You will get exposure into a lot of industries, but it depends on the agency that you're working with that determines the kind of work that you handle. So it really depends a lot. It's just letting you know that these are things that happen, or these are things that happen or will happen, and having you prepared for it. So which one do you think you are? Are you a UX designer, a UX researcher, a product designer?
Can I ask why the agency
Designers are discriminated against. Yeah, so this is what we're ending for today. You can ask me all your questions now. Yes, so the thing is that people have the perception that agency designers don't work on real projects. No, I'm not gonna say work on real projects. Usually, the kind of projects that come to some agencies is, oh, come and help us design our websites or design the first version of our application. And so the perception is that they don't do that much research. They just do pretty UI designs and give over to the company back, and then you're disconnected from the process going forward, whether or not the design works or they have no idea and it's like on to the next, which is how some agencies operate. So there is a reason why that stereotype exists. But I've not understood that, because with all of the projects that I've been working with or working on, we've had to do actual research. Sometimes we're not able to talk to users directly, but if we're working on a project that's already launched, we have access to the data that we're reviewing. And you're a designer, so you should understand best practices when you're designing and stuff like that. So that's generally what the thing is for in-house designers versus product designers. So in-house designers are like, yeah, we built this thing from scratch and we've made changes and iterations based on user feedback and user behavior, and y'all are agency designers and you have not. That's it.
Quite interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting argument. Anybody else have any question?
Okay, so you said one person can be a product designer. Isn't that too much work for one person?
When I outlined it the way I did, it feels like a lot, but that's where system thinking comes in, because you have to do end-to-end design, right? You have to start from understanding what the user behaviors needs are, and then taking that data into designing something that works for them and being able to test out with users or members of your team. So you should like a lot, but when you're doing it, it's not, it can trick you on some days, but it is very doable for one person. It is. It's just as the team grows larger and there are more stuffs to work on, you start to specialize, because people should focus on different aspects of the product. And what I've seen so far is, even while the product is expanding, you generally will still have just one designer in a team doing most of these things until it's really large, and then you start having dedicated researchers. Yeah, you start having dedicated researchers going out and proactively trying to figure out how we can improve our product or whatnot. So it is doable for one person. It does seem like a lot, but in practice, it's it's intertwined. It goes in and out of each other. You may or may not feel it depending on the workload or depending on the kind of projects that you're trying to pull off. Is there any more questions?
Do we get something to do this week, or like?
Tomorrow you will, today you don't. Tomorrow we're starting the class with an answer to this question, which one are you? And then you're going to tell me why you're deciding that this is probably, it doesn't change that your course content is not going to change, but it just helps you understand that, okay, this is where I'm leaning more towards and this is where I'm not leaning more towards. So tomorrow we kick off the conversation with you telling me which ones you've decided or you're thinking you would focus on. So if the money is your motivation, like product designers earn more. And then there is, I'm trying to decide which. I think it interchanges between UX research and UX design or UI design. So it does, but product designers earn more, which automatically means obviously you have more responsibility. So for those people considering money, there. That's your
I'm sorry, I have a question. So
Sure.
we have three things here. We have UX designer, we have UX researcher, and then we have product designer. So UI designer does not is not a standalone.
It rarely is a standalone, unless I've seen UI design roles, but most people cover UI design under product design.
Okay.
So instead of asking for a UI designer, they ask for a product designer. But UI design is a standalone role, and then it's mostly your visual skills. So most people that is coming from a graphic design background, is easier for them to transition into a UI design role. But you still need to understand user experience, which is why they make it, or it is turned into product design as against just UI designer.
Okay, because I'm actually more interested in UI design. So that means I will be tilting towards product. And then from what you're saying, product design is like a combination of UX design and then UX research. So that's more work.
Yep. But
Okay.
but then so what companies do is sometimes in the job descriptions they go UX/product designer or UI/product designer, right? So the reason why they're
Okay.
doing the UX/UI thing is just so that you know which they are leaning more towards. So they're looking for a product designer that is well versed in UI design versus a product designer that is more versed in UX design. But by itself, if you read product design job descriptions, is usually tilting towards UI anyway. So it is either product designer as is or UX/product designer.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. You're welcome. Anybody else with any other question?
So I was asking if you can do all right, UX, research, and products at the same time, like all together.
Yep.
If you
Yep.
have the capacity to do it.
Yep. It just there would always be an area of design where you are most comfortable with, or you're well versed, or you have more expertise in. But you should know everything else. And sometimes when you're working in a team self, you start to pick up on some of these other things. But yeah, there should be the part of design that you're an expert in, and then these other ones so you can easily collaborate with other people or jump in when someone else is not around.
Okay.
Any other question, people?
Hi.
Hi.
Last week,
Hmm?
let me talk about that.
Sir? What
Can
did
you hear
you?
me?
I can hear you now.
Then last week, Leslie spoke about MVP. I don't need to just do like three, like just maybe two sentences. Just understand what MVP.
M MVP.
MVP. Yeah. I think I
So
was talking about design thinking.
hold up, let me be sure that I heard you. You said this?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Minimum viable products is what an MVP
Yeah.
is. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it's the let me see. I'm trying to figure out what app to use or what product to use as an example. Okay, I don't know why a fintech app is coming to my mind. Something that looks like a piggy. So if we were to take Piggyverse for example, right? I think okay, yeah, so they have different features right now. They have the essence of Piggyverse is to save your money, right? But then you have the ability they have flex wallets, they have saving towards a goal, they have group savings, you have auto save and all of those things. I want to say in that instance, the concept of an MVP is what is the main thing that we launch that makes sense to our users. So if we want to start, we ideally you might be able to build all of these other features at once, but it might take you more time to be able to build that. And maybe you are still trying to figure out or test your idea. So you're coming up with an MVP to say that I want to say the tiniest bit or the most impactful bit, the most impactful feature that you're going to build that will make sense to your users. Where do you start from exactly? Right? Okay, so there's this other product that I'm working on, and we have a list of features, right? And we have to take stock to say, well, based on our resources, we have one developer and we want to launch in XYZ day so that we can capture the market as soon as possible. What is that thing that we can launch with that is valuable to our users and they can start engaging with while we are building out other features? So that's what our MVP was. And to get that, we had to do research. So we did interviews to understand user behaviors, the things that they complain about a lot, how they're currently solving that problem for themselves. And then based on that, we're like, well, this feature, gone, is what's most important. This is the one we should be right now. This is the one we should launch. And this is the one we should test, because this is the solution to all of these entire problems that users are talking about. Everything else that we're bringing is an add-on that would improve on this experience, right? But this feature is what we should get started with. And then depending on the team, sometimes the designs for the MVP are not all that. It's just putting together something so that the concept goes out. It's in the market, people are engaging with it, you are seeing how people are using it, and you're able to make quick and fast decisions to update on this. And then by the time you have enough data, by the time you are sure that this is exactly what you want to do, you can now get in more resources, you can get in more people, and you can start adding more features, or you can revamp that entire team to look nicer, work faster, whatever for your users or your target audience. But I would say that MVP is just that version 1 of your product. It shouldn't really contain everything. What's most important for people to use, or what's that feature that you're launching that will solve people's problems while you're learning more from the data, or while you're trying to build other things. Because unless you have a lot of money to hire all of the developers you need to get started on the product, and even when you do it, it's easier to go with an MVP so that you can test the market. You have all of these assumptions, you have all of these research data, but there is the what you ordered versus what you got. So you thought this is how it works until you put it in the market and users are doing something else, right? Or they are using it in a way that's different from how you designed it. So it makes sense to do a smaller version to test the market, especially if you don't have enough information, before putting in more resources to build out.
Thank you.
Cool. Do we have any more questions? No, we're cool. We filled out our attendance. All right. Great. Then that will be all for today. If you still have more questions for the and I will respond in case it's valuable for other people to learn as well. And don't forget to share your journey on social media.